بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Last week we had started on the rulings related to Salat al-Jum'ah. Today, inshallah, these are basically more rulings or extra rulings that surround Salat al-Jum'ah and some of the things that are related to it. So the first thing here is more than one Jum'ah is not allowed. Why do you guys think that is? Why not accommodate the people and have multiple Jum'ahs like we do today? And how come we can do it today, but in the madhāhib it's not allowed? Which is interesting because we actually follow the ruling and we can pray it in more than outside of the Dhuhr time.
I guess in the beginning it was to make things more unified, to make sure people
absolutely
were following the
No, I agree with that 100%. I mean, it's important to delineate and to make sure that we have some kind of unity, make sure that we're scheduled, because if we create a system or we put a system in place that actually forces people to follow particular rules and regulations, what's going to happen, right? So if the first time I miss Jummah and I find out that there's only one Jummah, what am I going to do the second time? I'm going to come on time. Right? I'm going to come on time. I'm going to come early. And it's many times because of these consequences and because of those strict rules that you will find that we follow them, right? We will follow things. I will make sure to go to Target before 9 p.m. Why? Because if I get there at 9:01, it's going to be closed. This is our nature, right? In developing that habit, developing that regiment, and making sure that we are being consistent in implementing these things. This is part of that. Not just that, remember we talked about the role of the imam historically? We said it's not just a religious role, it's also a what?
social,
right? It's like a socio-political role, that the imam is representative of the leadership, right? He's representative of the leadership. So now if you have one Jummah, what happens in the second one? Who gives it? You understand? So this creates that sense of conflict, and it can create possible tensions between the leadership itself. And not just that, what context are we talking this about? Where are these Jummahs happening historically?
in the masjid.
Not just the masjid, it's happening in Muslim lands, right? It's happening in Muslim lands. And because it's happening in Muslim lands, what are some of the benefits that they can take from that or get from that?
We all gathered in one spot.
Well, I mean, we're still gathering here, but I'm saying what is the benefit of the Muslim land?
That they're ran by the Sharia.
Okay, they're run by Muslims, right? They're run by Muslims, and the advantage of being run by Muslims is what?
We can stop certain things.
Right, activities can be stopped by government mandate, right? Or at least there will be some concessions for the Jummah. So if 95% of the people are attending Jummah in the workplace, what is that business going to do? Right, they're going to close. They're going to say, okay, well, we have to accommodate our workers because most of them are demanding to leave. You have many places in the Muslim world where Fridays is off, or they're mandated by government to give a window or a larger lunch break during that time so that people can actually go and attend the Jummah prayer. So is it sunnah to have Fridays off?
Sunnah?
Yeah.
No.
It is not. Why? And how do we know that?
One, I don't know, I guess that if we say it's a sunnah, there's nothing that, there was no order for people not to work.
Well, not just that. What does the verse say? فَإِذَا قُضِيَتِ الصَّلَاةُ فَانْتَشِرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ. Right? After the what is over? After the prayer is over. After the prayer is complete, after the prayer is over, go ahead. Go out. Go back to work. So even we have an order from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not meant to be a day off, right? Can it be a day off?
Yes.
Absolutely, right? That's a personal choice. And if you want to take it off, I don't see a problem or a big deal with that. For some people, it's a convenience thing. And they're like, well, it's Friday. I'm going to be going to work less, or I have to take a larger lunch break. It's easier for me just to go ahead and take it off. Again, which is not problematic in any way, shape, or form. So we had mentioned that having multiple Jummahs, sometimes it can have a political conflict that's associated with it. We had also said that because you're in a Muslim land, you will have more concessions for that. In general, in the United States, why do we have more than one Jummah?
In the United States.
Yeah. I mean, I can't speak on the entire Western world because I don't really know,
Yeah,
but at least in the US.
because we are so scattered, I think.
Okay. So being scattered, why would being scattered be a reason to have multiple Jummahs?
To accommodate for everyone's unique,
So why don't we accommodate for in the Muslim lands?
because it's like a unified schedule.
Allahu Akbar.
So the weekend.
Huh?
So the weekend.
It depends on the country. In Pakistan, Friday is not off. Like, and that's just one example. There are many Muslim countries where Friday is not off. So how can we have, in the madhāhib, we're not allowed. How can we have multiple Jummahs at Dar al-Hijrah? What gives you the right, Ya Mahdi, to allow such a violation?
If we take the stand that Jummah, that's allowed to Jummah is Friday.
Uh-huh.
And we don't accommodate a Friday non-obligatory act.
Why don't you guys have multiple Dhuhrs then?
I think that
Why don't you have multiple Maghribs?
the timing,
The timing is the same for Dhuhr.
as who? As Jummah?
I have a window for Dhuhr too. Right now, what time? Dhuhr comes in at like 1:05. And if we go Hanafi time, we can even go to Masjid al-Thani. It increases the window even more. Okay, so well, that's Jama'ah, not necessarily in the masjid. So the question then comes, all right, if it's a sunnah, that should even give me more leeway to make multiple prayers.
What's the sunnah?
To pray salat in congregation in the masjid.
Oh, in the masjid.
Yeah. So shouldn't that give me more leeway to have more prayers?
It has other conditions that are difficult to, like it needs to be 40 people.
Quorum, all right, we spoke about that.
And it's difficult to.
We get quorum for like regular prayers, alhamdulillah. So one of the reasons, from the multiple reasons, like space, right?
No, we can have space outside.
We can't actually. Legally, we have problems, right? It becomes, space is a real issue. And it's a very real issue. It's a very real problem that we have. It's usually not a time, because the larger the parking lot, what happens to the number of Jummahs at the masjid? Right, the larger the parking lot, usually the less Jummahs that masjid will host. It's almost always a space issue, almost always. It's not necessarily for accommodation, right? Because a lot of people are able to adjust their schedules accordingly on Fridays. And for those who aren't, they do the same things that they do in many Muslim countries. In many Muslim countries, you have different masajid that will pray at. They'll have different times. And some places will have an earlier Jummah, and some places will have a later Jummah, depending on where you are. I remember like it was almost 3 o'clock, and I was running late. I was with my family. I was traveling anyway, so for me, it wasn't a big deal. And my cousin was like, he's like, I'm going for Jummah. I was like, bro, it's like almost 3 o'clock. He's like, yeah, there's a late Jummah that happens at this masjid over here. So these things do happen. And these accommodations, again, they'll happen in the Muslim lands for different places, for different people, depending on what the need is of the particular area. But even then, there'll only be one Jummah. Why? Because again, space is not a problem. Space is not an issue. When you have so many cultural and religious and political accommodations for the majority of people, those aren't things that we are afforded in this society.
But the space overseas does never seem to be an issue because people are on the street.
Exactly.
They stop the traffic.
Yeah.
It's all culturally acceptable.
It's culturally acceptable. That's what I was going to throw in. So the thing is, like, blocking the streets in many of the Eastern countries, it's not a problem. It's not an issue. It's like, you're out of space. What do? Just start making rows in the street. In the streets, you'll find that there are rows, right? They have the rows painted in because there's like, okay, no, we will make this accommodation. Yes, go ahead, Akhi.
If more than one Jummah is not allowed,
Mm-hmm.
there's strict Ḥanbali opinion.
Yeah.
A particular school, that opinion is taken.
Well, I don't know, Akhi. That's a good question. That's a good question. And I'll look into it. Huh? So there are some stricter opinions on having multiple Jummahs. So you have some modern scholars who say that forget Jummah. you can't have more than one jama'ah.
Yeah, now that's the question I was going to.
Yeah.
Because there,
That's an old thing.
in reading it, having two jama'ah
Yeah.
in the same building,
Yes.
in different, at the same time.
What do our Hanafi brothers have to say about two jama'ah,
okay?
brother?
At the same time, like say for instance, in separate rooms. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, and actually two imams,
Yeah.
you know, because.
You run into the same problems we were talking about, right?
Yes.
Because there's an establishment of leadership that becomes an issue, right? Remember we said not only is the imama historically, it hasn't always been just a religious position. Many times it was also a socio-political one. And because of that, when you have two people, right, not just that, this is something that leads to ill intent. Who's leading?
Yes, true.
No, very honestly, like who's, man, I'll wait for the second jama'ah.
Because we had the issue.
Yeah.
These places, these
Mhm.
days, you know, but if there's a hierarchy, because we do have sort of a hierarchy that appoints,
Yeah.
okay, so.
Like we have institutions that appoint people, and there's a reason for that, right? So the thing is, having one congregation, it does promote unity, because regardless of who's leading, you have to what?
Well,
Or you have to follow and you have to pray. And that's something that, again, it might not instill that idea of love and brotherhood, but it'll instill that idea of tolerance. Like regardless of who's praying, I have to pray behind them. And not just that, even within a community, we will find that if an individual purposely is coming late every time and making his own jama'ah, right? This happens.
yes.
What happens? Right? This creates fitna. This creates a problem. We as individuals, as Muslim, we like having regiment. We like having regiment. Even all of the things that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it led to, it led to civilization, being civilized, being organized, coming into all these things. Even the salawat before, when did they used to pray the congregational prayers? 7 minutes after, huh? Oh, okay. When would they make the congregational prayer? At what time? During the time of the Prophet ﷺ, at what time would they make the congregational prayers? The time that everybody congregated. It was more of like an organic thing than it was a regimented thing. As time went on, what happened?
They made it into a regiment.
They turned it into a regiment. Like that. Now there's fixed times for these prayers, and people started praying at 6. They used to wait, and not just that. That's another reason, right? The Prophet ﷺ, as the Sharia was coming down, rules would change, and they would wait for permission from the Prophet ﷺ to do anything, unless he gave them explicit permission to do otherwise. And after he ﷺ passed, then you started having more regiment. You started having, more people would have more awrad. They would have more liturgy. It would be a lot more organized. They would read a certain set of Quran every week, immediately after the Prophet ﷺ passed. Right? This isn't something that they waited for. As soon as he ﷺ passed, they're like, okay, the Quran is complete. Now this is how much Quran I'm going to read every week. And they would stay upon that. This is how many adhkar I would recite. This is how much dua I would make, right? Having that is something that is a very intrinsic part of Islam, to become regimented, right? What is the purpose of the 5 prayers? So that we can become regimented, so we start having a routine. Like these things are really, really important. And not just that, respecting authority, respecting hierarchy, understanding that all of these things lead to order, right? Islam is about order. It's about modernizing. It's about civilization. It's not about chaos. So this is one of that. So going back to the multiple jama'at, that's one of the reasons. It destroys hierarchy and introduces this element of competition. Instead of bringing unity, introduces this element of competition. So while I do understand, the brothers who say, okay, it's not permissible, or it's bid'ah, or whatever the case might be, the reality is that introducing a second congregation purposely, and if I'm coming late by accident, that's a different situation altogether. But if I'm not introducing it purposely, I am only trying to sow the seeds of fitna. I'm only trying to exert myself. I'm only trying to push myself. I'm only trying to enforce myself on other people. And all of this is out of pride. All of it is out of ego. This is not out of sincerity. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. So preparing for Jummah. I'm sure all of you guys know all these things, right? Taking ghusl, wearing a clean garment, perfuming, coming early. Is there any questions on any of these? I think it's pretty clear. No? Making tahiyyat al-masjid.
Oh, nice.
Ah,
Must.
lazim.
As
I'm with it. Have to make tahiyyat al-masjid.
It's the same, before the stuff here.
Huh? Even during the khutbah. During the khutbah. Wait for the khutbah to start. So I mean, granted, there is a classical difference of opinion concerning this. So over here, who wouldn't agree with this? Huh? And the Hanafis, right? These are the two that would not agree with this. And who would say that you make it regardless of, you know, if the khutbah is started or not? Right, the Shafis and the Hanabila. So, sure, no problem. Tahiyyat al-masjid, this is where an individual, this is a prayer that we make to greet the masjid, right? It's not a separate prayer. It is just 2 rak'ah that we make. So if I want to make sunan, or if I come in, like for example, I come in, I miss the khutbah and I pray with the imam. Jummah. How many rak'ah does he make? He makes 2. Do I need to make another set of 2 units? No, I don't. I've fulfilled the condition of praying in the masjid or greeting the masjid. This is just a way, it's just a way of greeting the masjid. This can be fulfilled with sunan, it can be filled with a fard, it can be fulfilled with nawafil. It doesn't matter.
Does it have to be fulfilled before sitting?
I'm sorry?
Before sitting.
Before, yeah, and it should be before you sit down. Are there exceptions for this? Obviously, I mean, there are other exceptions. There are a lot of scholars who will say, like during the zawal time, you don't pray the tahiyyat al-masjid, right? This is because it's the time that you can't pray. You don't utilize that. If somebody comes into the masjid, they don't have wudu. Are they obligated now to go make wudu and then go? No, they're not. They can just go and sit down. And not just that, is tahiyyat al-masjid, what is the hukam on it? Most of the scholars say it's a sunnah anyway. They can just go sit down.
They do what they care.
Huh? If there's a dars going on, right? You know, or if they're going, you know, I mean, like brothers and sisters, or they're going to meet somebody at the masjid, right? You know, there are a number of, I mean, not everybody's like a abid, you know what I mean?
Some say that this is also, it has its license to make it during other times as well.
Yes, so like the Zahiriya, they have something called if it's salat that asbab, and even the Hanabila and the Shafi'ah, they have a little bit of leeway with that, but even they would say don't pray at this time, like don't pray at the zawal time. Zahiris, they'll say no, it doesn't matter. Yani the obligation, because it's obligatory to them, would override the impermissibility.
What is zawal?
Zawal, we said that. What are the zawal times? You guys remember? How many times are there for the zawal? There are 3 times. And what are those times?
Sunrise.
All right. So okay, sunrise. So we said here, this is what at this time. This is the sun, and this is the horizon. This is Fajr. All right. And right here, this is what? Right. This is where the sunrise begins. If Fajr time is now, it's ended. Right. So I cannot pray from here until what? Tell me when. Right here. So once it clears the horizon, I can now pray again. But the entire rising time, I can't. Dave, what is the second time? At its zenith, when it's at its highest point. And the third time? At the Maghrib. So when is Maghrib? So here, is this Zawal or no? Yeah, this is Zawaj. Allahu Akbar. No, this is Zawaj, right? So this is the Zawal time.
Zawal is when the actual time
that.
So at least for Lugar, like Zawal and Lugar are like.
They're very close.
My understanding is that they're synonymous.
Yeah.
The highest point is Istiwa, and then Zawal is when it passes by the highest point and the prayer starts. That's Zawal.
No. The prayer time starts at its zenith, and then as soon as it moves from its highest point, then then this is Dhuhr time. أحسن. تفضل.
The zenith is impermissible to pray.
Yeah. Why? Because it's Zawal. Okay, so I can't pray here either?
No, you pray once the sun passes the zenith. So at the highest point.
Okay, over here.
Istiwa.
Yeah.
That's impermissible to pray.
Okay, we're agreed here.
And then when it
right here.
At that point, it's permissible to pray. That's Zawal.
So how is it permissible to pray during Zawal?
That's when Dhuhr time comes in.
But I think the istilah of Ahnaf.
Okay. That might be it. Yeah. So Zawal time for the Jamhur is the time it's not permissible to pray.
It's just about how to make concept. It's not about when.
Yeah.
About how to
because we're agreeing on the times,
yes.
Right? We agree that when the sun is at its highest point, can we pray?
No.
No, we can't. As soon as it clears it, can I pray?
Yeah.
Yes, I say the same thing.
But that's called zawal.
Not for us. We call it dhuhr.
No, I'm saying like you're saying, zawal is, I'm sorry, when
Yeah.
it's permissible to pray.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. And then the third time we said is when, what? Before Maghrib, right? Before Maghrib, this time is not permissible to pray. Until when? When can I pray? Right here, right? As soon as the sun clears the horizon, this is now what? This is now Maghrib time. Type speaking. Is it permissible for me to speak during the khutbah? There are two scenarios. I'm speaking to someone else, or I'm speaking to the imam.
Right on. Speaking to the imam.
Speaking to the imam. So what Oda just did, if I was giving the khutbah and he's like, yeah, imam, right?
No.
Is that okay or no?
No, not that kind of stuff.
Shafi fil madhab jadid, you'll be okay. Why? Because I'm addressing the imam. Yeah, this is in his, and not just that, in his new madhab, right? So Shafi, what's show al-mu'tamad? There's a new school. Sure, no problem. So basically, when you're talking about speaking during the khutbah, there are two scenarios that happen, right? One is addressing the imam, and the second one would be talking to someone else, right? These are the only two scenarios that there would be. So now, if I'm talking to the imam, you would have the majority say that you cannot speak even during, I'm sorry, you can't speak to others. You can't speak to others except for the Shafi'iyah. Some of the Shafi'iyah would allow you to speak to someone else if there is if there's a reason, if there's a need for it. Not just like you sit down and you're having conversation. Yo, so what's good, man? What'd you have for dinner last? No, like that's not what's intended here. If there's a need, if a need arises, then it's okay to speak to someone else. But the majority say that speaking during the khutbah is to others. It's not permissible. It's not allowed. Like, what about speaking to the imam?
Only if he makes an error or mistake that is serious, so you correct the imam.
What if I want clarification? What do you mean, ya imam? You're taking too long.
Sure, too short. Too short.
Go more.
Yes.
Yes.
The lady that
Umar radiallahu anhu. And a lot of them will base the ruling off of this scenario and off of what had happened, where a woman was asking Umar for clarification. And even you have, so all of these narrations are to show us and to tell us when it comes to particular scenarios and particular situations, it's okay to address that. So the Jumhur, they would say that this is permissible, seeking clarification or making the imam aware of something, right? All of these would be reasonable things to let the imam know, or again, for clarification. Like, what about cheering him on?
Like in the church, huh?
Like in church. Like preach, brother, imam. I think culturally it might not be, I guess it depends on where you are. I have yet to go to a khutbah where that happens. Yeah. I don't have enough exposure.
Yeah.
You don't.
Okay.
I know the communities you be in. I haven't been in the right place.
I'm only in immigrant communities. I don't really know.
But sometimes they don't. They might now. They might have replaced you with
Oh, okay.
and they replaced that with preach.
Like, tell him, Sheikh.
Yeah, when they get when the Spirit moves them.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
Like they say, when the Holy Spirit.
The Holy Spirit. When Jibreel.
They're not talking about Jibreel, but
yeah. So and again, there are situations, and the thing is, we have to make sure that it's appropriate and having normal conversation. What is the purpose of the khutbah? And we had talked about this before. What is the purpose behind it? Why have a khutbah at all? And why obligate something? Like, it's an obligation, right? It's an obligation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making this obligation for the community to attend this khutbah once a week. What is the imam supposed to talk about?
spiritually uplifting.
Okay.
Something that's
I'm sorry?
beneficial to
Remembering Allah.
Okay, like a remembrance and a reminder.
To address current issues, community issues.
Okay, so the member, what's interesting about the member is it's a place for, it's a political it's a political tool, right? It's a religious tool, right? It's a social tool, right? There's so many ways to use the member. It's also a place where you can give lessons. is the minbar an appropriate place to give a lesson to the community? Like, should I start talking about, okay, we're going to talk about the rulings of Jumu'ah today?
Depends if you
How savvy you are as an imam or speaker.
All right, so you're telling me don't do that.
No, I'm not saying don't, because it may be needed.
So, go ahead.
Some basic Jumu'ah etiquette and rulings would be beneficial if you have some people
Yeah.
really don't understand. They start browsing their phone, they may be even chatting. I mean, on purpose late.
I definitely see what you guys are saying. The issue that I have with using the minbar as a form or a way to give like detailed lessons like this, most people aren't mentally prepared to come in for that. How many messages do you really feel a person can take away? Somebody who's not used to sitting in classes, somebody who's not used to taking Islamic knowledge, what kind of attention span do you think this person actually has?
Sure.
Huh? A very short one, right? And is that a bad thing?
No.
No, not necessarily. I mean, like, everybody's different, and it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So if we understand that the normal person, regular person who's coming for these khutab, even the khutab of the Prophet ﷺ, how long were they? Right. So the thing is, that's in terms of relativity, right? So they're relatively short. They're relatively short to the point where they would say, the prayer was actually longer than that. Is it necessary that word for word that happened? No, it's just that, it's a little bit of an exaggeration to express to us how short his sallallahu alayhi wasallam's khutab were. And there's another thing to keep in mind. The Prophet ﷺ, in his speech, he's described as what?
Short but concise.
Not just short but concise. He was known as Jawami al-Kalim. Right, Jawami al-Kalim, that he would speak little, and the meaning would be deep. Right, there'd be a deep meaning behind it, and that's how he sallallahu alaihi wasallam was, and it's a sign of his eloquence. It's a sign. So, right, we're kind of right. We speak a lot, but we got little wisdom coming out. Allah musta'an. Yeah, man. Allah yuthabbitna. So, all of those are different. Those are different factors to keep in mind when we talk about that. But did he sallallahu alaihi wasallam use it as a means of inspiring, use it as a means of uplifting, use it as a means of bringing the people and reminding them, or did he use it as a means to give them lessons? Right, it was more so a reminder than it was anything else. Why do you think that is? Why is it more important for me? So if I had a choice between giving a lesson and being uplifting, why am I going to lean more toward uplifting in that particular, remember, you have a number of different outlets within any institution, within any place. Why am I going to use this outlet as predominantly a means of uplifting the people?
Once a week.
Because of, right? All right, the time frame, the repetition that happens. And not just that, the people that come, are they the same people that come every week?
No.
Not necessarily. So if you start setting up a lessons type thing, you have to make sure you have an extremely dedicated audience for that particular lesson. What else?
You want people to come.
You want to be attractive.
Yeah, you want people to come.
And if people are, oh God, here's another, we need to be honest with ourselves. Like, are people coming to the Jummah khutbah because they're like, okay, I want to go learn something?
Some are coming just to obey.
Right, it's an obligation,
Right.
and they're like, I am going to fulfill my obligation.
It'll be short. I can get in, I can get out.
Yeah. So, and the longer we make it, what happens?
The less they'll come to you.
Not just that, during the khutbah, what happens?
They're distracted.
Right, if I as a khatib start seeing people look at their watch, what should I do?
You need to close your
I need to close out my khutbah. Huh? They're going on Facebook, they're probably going even before the khutbah started, right? So, but the reality is, like, if I'm looking around and I see everybody engaged with me, right? If everybody's looking at me while I'm giving the khutbah, if everybody's like, and you can see that, like, as for those of you who have been given the opportunity to give khutbah, when the khutbah is engaging, you'll feel that, like, you'll get that feedback, and you'll get that energy from the people who are listening to you. And if you are getting that feedback, that means that, okay, now you have the people engaged. My job is to not to lose them. If I manage to get them engaged to this point, it's important for me now to look at those patterns that allowed everyone to be engaged. If I'm encouraging, if I'm uplifting, if I'm positive. If the people are walking out of the khutbah are happier than they were when they came in, right? I think that's a successful khutbah. Or if they're walking out of the khutbah with a point that they're actually now they have to think about and they have to spend time with. Because the khutbah is something, again, we want that to continue with them. right? This is something that we want to carry them over into the next week. Because the Prophet ﷺ, what did he say about from the Jumu'ah to the Jumu'ah? Right, it erases the sins. Why? Because the effect of the Jumu'ah and what I had taken away from it is enough to carry me into that following week. From prayer to prayer, right? From Jumu'ah to Jumu'ah, from Hajj to Hajj. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us these seasons. He's given us these opportunities. All we have to do is take advantage of them. And they're really beautiful times. If I'm feeling that my Jumu'ah is a chore, if I feel that going to the masjid is a chore, then there are a few things that I can do at that point. Number one, I need to re-examine my intention, right? That's something that's really important. And number two, I might need to re-examine my khatib. Like, is it necessary that I go? Like, sometimes we don't have a choice, right? Like, because one fits into our slot, we will go to it. And if I need to re-examine my khatib, there are two choices I have even in that. What can I do? I can go talk to the khatib. Be like, bro, your khutbahs are really bad. And I know it's a tough conversation. I remember I was in a city. I'm not going to name any cities. Someone might figure it out. I mean, there are a lot of bad khatibs, but like I went to a city, and I listened to the khutbah. I went to the brother after the khutbah. I was like, "Akhi, why were you reading from a paper the entire khutbah?" And I said, "And not just that, I could tell you haven't even practiced it. You wrote it, and you just went up there the first time and read it."
What was the sanction by the government?
Huh? Allahu Akbar. But maybe by the U.S. government, because it was in America.
No, but like,
Yeah.
like the dynamic, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, Allah understand. So
In the United States.
no, so the thing is, you make sure that you're practiced, make sure that you're prepared, make sure it's appropriate. Like these things are really important when we're presenting these ideas. And if I'm not ready, what kind of energy is the audience going to take? Like they see that, and it's going to be reflective in them, because if you're just up there like, Inna alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu, like you are bored with yourself. let alone other individuals being bored with you. So what topics should I choose as a khatib? Right, ones that I'm comfortable with, and ones that I'm actually excited about.
What if it's politics?
I'm sorry?
What if it's politics?
Even the politics, it's the way that it's approached. So what is a bad idea when we talk about politics on the minbar? What's probably not a good way to approach it? Even controversy, I don't really have a problem with, honestly. I think controversy is a good way to actually get people engaged, right? Because now you're stirring up emotions in individuals. So, but in that controversy, what do I not want to do?
Take one position,
Ahsant.
official support.
Yeah, I don't want to polarize. And what is polarization? I don't want to split the congregation. Or I don't want the people to feel that I have sided with one group and I've completely neglected the other. And I can do that in politics. How come I can cater to everyone? Because it's not a religious mandate. It's just opinions. It's opinions and theories on how to get to particular logistic solutions. Even within religious opinions, it's important for me to be aware of the spectrum of opinions. Why? Same reason. I don't want a group of people from the congregation to feel isolated. I don't want them to feel separated. I want everybody to feel like we are truly one congregation, even with all of our differences and even with all of our issues and problems. So the last thing is gesturing. Everybody, all scholars, and there's an agreement that you are allowed to gesture. So what is a gesture that would be something that I would need to do during the Jummah? Yeah.
Like, hey.
Like saying hi?
Yeah,
Okay. Right, acknowledging someone. I don't see that it's a problem. When would it become a problem? I'm sorry?
Telling somebody to be quiet.
Yeah. Like telling someone to be quiet. I think that's very, or like, telling someone like, put their phone away or get quiet. Like all of these gestures, again, it's in the same light as talking. When should I do these gestures?
When they're needed.
When they're needed, right? I shouldn't,
Sometimes I've seen
I've seen or people asking people to come forward. All of these things are completely reasonable. They're completely fine because there's a need for them. Like, when does this become a problem? When I start doing these things excessively, and to the point now where I'm not even paying attention to what the Imam is doing. Even the Prophet ﷺ, like he saw Ibn Umar playing with, because during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they didn't have carpet, right? You know, they had little stones that they would go and they would pray, and this is how the floor of the masjid was. Why? It would prevent dust. You know, even if there were animals or dogs that had come in, like, you know, it would soak through. So it was a way that they actually used to pray. So what would happen is that during the prayer, he would just start picking up, you know what I mean? He would just start, just like we do with the carpet sometimes, like, you know, we'll start drawing images, or, you know, we'll, like, you know, and we will distract ourselves. That is not permissible, right? I am not allowed to distract myself from what is being said and what is being spoken about in the khutbah. This is where it becomes a problem. Or I'm waving at every single person who's coming in, right? Again, this is a problem because I'm now distracting myself from that. But necessary, go ahead, Akhi.
Like, I've seen people using their touch like one that be something like this, like that's not the time.
That's not the time for that.
Yeah.
Right? It's not the time for that. And there, like, that situation is, for me, it's like, okay, are you listening to the khutbah? Are you showing off? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what is happening right now? You know, is it an appropriate time for that? And is there a time for subha? Is there a time to do tasbih? Yeah, absolutely, right? The rest of the day, like, you know, this time is very specific for us, you know, to be inspired. This time is specific for us, you know, to grow as a community. This time is very specific for us to come together. You know, there's somebody up there who's giving his time, is willing to, you know, to help the community and to raise the community. And we should respect him enough to let him and allow him to speak.
Okay.
Yes.
I once saw someone, so he came, instead of praying 2 rakat at the other masjid, he prayed 4.
Okay.
I wasn't there, it was taken.
Yeah.
I know that he's praying, and that's not permissible, isn't it?
No. Like, even the madhāhib, the only thing that they would allow during the khutbah, they say, listen, just pray your tahiyyat al-masjid. This is not a time for sunan. Yeah. And even the sunan for Jum'ah, there's a lot of khilaf over it. Are there actual sunan for Jum'ah, or is this something that the Prophet ﷺ used to regularly do? You know, how many did he do? There's even khilaf on that. You know, did he do 2 or did he do 4? In all of these discussions, like, I have no issue with that. Like, I think with the Hanafis, you guys don't allow prayer before Jum'ah, right?
It's fine as long as it's not.
It's before the khutbah.
No, it's allowed.
It's allowed? Okay.
Before the khutbah, yeah. All
right. So there are some, I remember there being a limitation in some madhāhib. Basically, there are some madhāhib that allow you to continue praying up until Jummah starts, up until the adhan, and there's some that won't. So there, you have so much discussion around these issues of the sunan of Jummah itself, that now, like, going extra and going out of your way during the khutbah, unless you just don't like the khatib, right? Like, that's the only that's the only reason I can think of. Like, shoot, I'd rather just, you know, pray 2 more than listen to what this guy's talking about. I actually had a number of people ask, like, Sheikh, you know, you should give a talk on the manners of Jummah. I was like, I think it's a good idea. I just need to have a talk with a group of people before this. They're like, who? I was like, the khatibs, because they're like some really bad khutbahs. You know, let me at least remove that reason, you know, first, and then I could be like, okay, hey, listen, we're trying to provide quality khutbahs now, and you guys still aren't listening. This is something that really needs to be discussed and talked about. Yeah.
Do we need to skip like after Jum'ah, like just come out from the left for like 33 times, or do we just like get up after Jum'ah and pray sunnah?
You can pray sunnah after Jummah, so there's no problem. There's no limitation in that. Like I said, there's khilaf. You know, is it 2? Is it 4? Either's fine. It's not a big deal. Any other questions? So where can we pray Jummah?
Wherever you want to pray.
Wherever you want to pray. Ideally, it should be prayed in the masjid, right? There's a consensus on the permissibility of praying in Jummah in the masjid. This is ideally where the space should be and where it can be. If the house is owned, can you pray in a house? Depends, right? So if like, for example, like, people are there's a bunch of people in a neighborhood and they're like, okay, well, why don't we just make Jummah at my house, because the nearest masjid is X distance away. Everybody's working from home.
How far is that?
Huh? 30 miles. It's right at the cusp. I wasn't going to make it easy.
So follow the opinion that allows it.
So number one, even if it's owned, like, it has to be either designated as a masjid or it has to be in transition to becoming one. That's something that's important. And as long as this, for most scholars, as long as the space is permissible to use. It's completely fine. I don't think there's a major difference of opinion around this, honestly. What if it's rented or a shared space? Like sometimes we hold Jummah in like a church.
That's fine.
It's okay.
What's wrong with the strict opinion saying that would not allow?
The Jamhur allow it. The Jamhur allow it. It's only the Malikis that actually don't. They say that it has to be an owned space. Like you can't use a rental space for that.
What's the reason?
Huh?
What's the reason for that?
It has to be an established place. It has to be a masjid jama', meaning that the people actually have to go, and it has to be an established space for that. It can't just be. It can't be a transitionary space. Lastly, playing outside. Everybody holds it to be acceptable. There's no problem with that. There's no issue with that. Any questions on any of these? The next, so eighth prayer.
I heard opinion about there is nothing can be above the masjid, meaning if it's a 3-story building and the masjid is on the second floor, it cannot be.
So for the Ḥanbalis, basically what the problem is that anything, the ruling on the floor, like, so the ground floor, whatever ruling that is, it applies to everything above it too. So if we build an apartment building above the masjid right now, the ruling of all the space above this would be masjid. And it has to be treated by them as a masjid.
This is how they've done at the Haram,
Yeah.
making,
Mhm.
they make these precincts that people.
Yeah, so that is slightly different. That's more like, okay, how do we determine like where the rows can end? And they'll provide space saying that, okay, you can't actually pray in these spaces unless the rows continue up until the space. Yeah. But for this, like, for example, can I make tawaf in a helicopter? Like, this is where the theoretical discussions come in. You know, can I make tawaf in a helicopter? If I fly over Arafah on the day of Hajj, does my Hajj count?
People have had this discussion.
So you know where the discussion actually started from? The discussion actually started from, what if a jinn threw somebody over Arafah? Would he be considered? I'm being really honest. This is where the discussion starts. It's a classical discussion. Like, okay, if he was thrown over Arafah, would his Hajj become? And the thing is, you know, subhanAllah, the amazing thing is they had all these theoretical discussions that actually have application today. Because for them, who would have imagined that there's going to come a time where we're going to like build airplanes or like fly? You know, that's something that would never have been conceptualized. So, I'm sorry.
Jimmy Strong.
Listen, you know what I mean? So, you know, flying over that space with that. So you have a lot of it is like, okay, that applies and those theoretical rulings apply because whatever is on the ground, the space above would take that ruling. So what would they say? They would say, okay, no, actually take the prayer area and build it on top so that the the lower stages wouldn't have that ruling.
What I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's an apartment building.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, not.
You designated a floor. You designated a floor. Yeah.
You buy an apartment.
Uh-huh.
Would that be? I mean, if we live at Darura.
I don't see a problem personally. Like, you know, if you dedicate one floor, and this is not uncommon. So I've seen it in a lot of Muslim countries. What they actually do is even in an office building, they'll dedicate one space as the musalla, as the prayer area. And again, and they'll have Jummah there sometimes too. You know, depending. Yes.
IMF and the world that has
Uh-huh.
their own masjid and
Okay.
they do Jummah inside.
Okay. SubhanAllah. Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of places around the world, you know, that they dedicate that space for that to happen. The Eid prayer, I don't know how, we got what, like 10 minutes until then. You know, I'll stop here. Next week we'll be off. I'll be traveling, inshallah. So we'll continue when I come back. The next discussion is the janais, right? So the funeral prayers. So we'll stop for questions, if anybody has any questions, inshallah, and then we'll break for salah.
Well, what if like the masjid's technically not like owned, like they're paying off the loan, like they're paying a mortgage?
I mean, it's still transitional, so I don't see that to be a problem or an issue. Like I said, it's only the Malikis that have a problem with rented spaces. Everyone else is okay with it. So if it's okay for them to rent so even transitional purchases, I don't see a problem.
When the imam is praying,
Yeah.
and you know when he transitions to the next pillar,
Uh huh.
and there's the Allah, should we say Allah Akbar as well, like the Sami Allahu liman hamidah, do we say Sami Allahu liman hamidah?
So in the madhab, everything that the imam says is repeated except what? Sami Allahu liman hamidah. That's the only thing that's not repeated of what the imam says. Any other questions?
A related question.
Sure.
So,
Unless anybody has any related questions.
yeah.
No? Okay.
I asked you once about participation in other religions' rituals.
Mm.
So, huh? So if I go out with my non-Muslim friends,
Yeah.
Catholics, and they pray before meal,
Yeah.
must I get up or can I be seated? But
So-
occasionally I'm not participating in it.
Okay. So the question about participating in other people's religious rites, when you're sitting down at the same table, are you participating?
Somebody may think
So-
I am.
Are you participating?
No, intention, no, but they are praying whatever they do.
Whatever they're doing, akhi. Like, listen, you can have a Buddhist sitting there. You can have, you know what I mean? Like, you can have all kinds of people sitting there. But the question is, are you participating? That's it. There's a difference between participating and being present,
Okay.
right?
That's my question. So,
Does that help?
yeah.
Right.
So I can be.
You can be present,
Yeah.
right? But you cannot,
Of course.
you
not.
can't participate.
Yeah.
And that's a simple differentiation there.
Well, I have many.
So the thing is that you get a lot of questions regarding, attending a wake, for example. There's a wake and there's a funeral in a lot of Christian traditions. The wake is the actual religious function, and the condolences is what happens afterward. There's general agreement that you attend the condolences. There is a difference of opinion on attending the actual religious function. You have two hadiths where the Prophet ﷺ actually allowed them to attend their family members, and they were non-Muslim, right? They were not just non-Muslim, they were pagan, where the Prophet ﷺ actually allowed them to attend the procession and to attend, the religious function. Again, a lot of that has to do with what we just spoke about, which is what? Being present and participating. Yeah.
So what is the wake and?
The wake is the religious function.
What does it look like? So I know.
So basically, what they do is like they bring out the body, and then the priest will he'll do the whatever the religious ceremony is. That's what the wake is.
But you can be present at the wake.
Yeah, there's khilaf, right? There's a valid difference of opinion concerning it.
Specifically for this.
Yeah, for the wake.
ritual.
Yeah, for the religious rituals. But like I said, a lot of it has to do with like, okay, is being present also is it condoning it? You know what I mean? Or are you like are you validating that, or endorsing? Ahsant, jazakallah khair. Right? Are you endorsing it? But that's all it is. I mean, yeah. Can the imam pray on the minbar?
Yeah.
So there are narrations where the Prophet ﷺ actually prayed on the minbar, and in order to make sajda, he used to actually step down. And why do you think he prayed on the minbar? So the people could see him, right? So the people could see him, hear him. Maybe I don't know how much more sound would project from there, because even when you're reciting, like the imam is facing forward, right? It's like everybody's behind him. What did they used to do? So they didn't have mics and things, huh? Right, there would be a muballigh, right? So there would be somebody who would actually hear in front of him, and then they would yell it, and this would happen like depending on how big the congregation was. Nazim.
So in the culture of my home country, there is such a notion as slaughtering as a sign, as a shukr, like there is a
slaughtering.
sign that is shukr,
Yeah.
but there is always something, okay, there would be a traffic accident, but you are safe.
Yeah.
This is why you gotta go and slaughter a lamb.
Yeah.
Specific-
No, it's basically because Allah saved my life, I take a life.
Yeah.
Right, that's the bin Taliban. No. There's no sunnah behind this. Even the slaughtering is a very specific worship, right? You don't slaughter, because a lot of people, what they do is they say, okay, I'm slaughtering on behalf of my dead uncle, or I'm slaughtering on behalf of, while that is permissible, essentially, what do you do with the meat? Like, do I slaughter on behalf of my uncle and then take the meat home? Right? That usually doesn't happen. They usually slaughter on behalf of whoever it is, and then they distribute it. So you can say, I'm distributing and I'm giving sadaqah on behalf of whoever it is, but actually doing the slaughter, no, there's no basis in the sunnah for anything like this.
So follow-up question on this: since we are adding a sabbath reason that is not found in the Quran and Sunnah, would you call it bid'ah?
No.
Why?
So you have a number of open-ended actions where the Prophet ﷺ allowed to happen. Like for example, he ﷺ, he used to make dua, right? Did he confine the dua in any way?
Yeah.
Meaning, did he say like, okay, well, these are things you can ask for and these are things you can't ask for, or you can only ask at this time and you can't ask at that time? No. The same thing with adhkar. He didn't put a limit on a number on them either.
I've heard from someone else saying there is 5 factors. Maybe there's a but
Yeah. So basically, no. So basically, what they do is if there's any type of taqeed, if there's any type of limitation that's put on any type of worship, time, place, reason, all of these things. So these are the reasonings that they put. They basically got these from Shatibi and Ibn Taymiyyah. And if you go back to Muwafaqat and if you go back to some of Ibn Taymiyyah's works, they list the same things, but you will find they themselves, they actually perform these adhkar. Like Ibn Taymiyyah, he said he put these conditions and he himself used to recite from Fajr, from the time Fajr was over until Shuruq, Fatiha. Where do you get that from? He used to repeat it and he used to keep reciting it. Like, where did that come from? He himself is going against the rulings that he placed. So we know by his application that that's not what he meant. What he actually meant is when it's done toward ritual worship. What is ritual worship? Prayer, fasting. Right? Things that have been defined. If the Prophet ﷺ defined something, then we are not allowed to take it outside of that definition. No, ritual. Like I can't, for example, the sunan, the Prophet ﷺ defined how I make my sunnah, right? Can I pray 3 rak'ah? No. Like just in the middle of the day, can I pray 3? Why? Prophet ﷺ didn't allow it. He told us, he said, pray in sets of 2. Or let me think of another example. Or if I change the way I pray, if I do 2 ruku', I do 4 sajdas. Is that allowed? I decide, you know what, I'm going to pray 2 rak'ah, and in every rak'ah, I'm going to add 1 ruku' and I'm going to add 2 sajdas.
Or tawaf. If I want to do
8
tawaf.
Why? Because those are all ritual worship that the Prophet ﷺ has defined them. Anything that is defined, I am not allowed to add or subtract from that. Or like in what type of additions am I talking about? If I say, like, for example, every Tuesday, I want to do this dhikr at this time, like from 7:30 to 8, for example. I've limited it in time. Yes, I've limited it in number because I'm putting a specific number on it. Neither of these are problematic because this is an open-ended type of worship anyway. Where does it become a problem? If I say from 7:30 to 8 every Tuesday that there's a specific virtue associated with this time, this is where it's a bid'ah. This is where it's a innovation.
So it's the virtue attaching.
Yeah, why? Because now I'm adding something that the Prophet ﷺ and the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If I believe there's a specific virtue in it, yeah, that's problematic. But making the dua itself, did the Prophet ﷺ define for us like how it should be made? He himself, ﷺ, he would make congregational dua. Maybe not in the same way that we do, like, where it's a little bit longer and sometimes it can be more elaborate or for specific people. But he ﷺ never prevented that.
And the acts become dangerous when we connect them with defied acts, like to say, like for instance, if a congregation decides that this is their regular practice after Salah to do this particular dua immediately after every Salah. So
even if I did that, why would that be a problem?
I said that would be a problem.
I'm asking why.
Because people would,
so I'm sorry, it's recording. So for those who didn't hear, basically the brother's saying, if I attach anything to the obligatory prayers, this becomes problematic. So my question would be why?
Because we attach this to something that's obligatory.
And if I don't do it, what's going to happen? Do people say their prayer is not complete?
Some might take it to be after a while.
And what do they do?
They will continue to do it.
They'll continue praying. And they'll continue praying behind you. Yeah, go ahead.
Also, there'll be, people, could do the tasbih after.
I mean, there are dua, like I'm saying, what is the first thing that we say after a prayer? A lot of scholars, they say takbir, astaghfirullah. What is astaghfirullah? But what is it? It's a dua. I ask Allah, ya Allah, please forgive me. So the thing is making the dua after the obligatory prayers. I mean, again, this is something that is open-ended. Attaching it in the sense that my prayer is not complete without it, this is where it becomes problematic, right? But just doing it, if I'm doing it for logistic reasons, it's convenient. Everybody's there, and more people are making dua. I personally don't see a problem with that. I don't see issue with it. Even if I make something into a habit, even if it's something that I teach, again, I don't see a problem with it. The only time it becomes a problem, again, if I attach a specific virtue that Allah and His Messenger didn't attach to it. Yeah.
I have a question when saying Bismillah.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, like saying Bismillah before doing an action,
Mm-hmm.
or let's say before I go to the test, I say Bismillah.
Yeah.
And let's say my intention is because I'm doing this, I want to get barakah.
Sure. But what is the purpose of the basmala? Even the wording itself, in the name of Allah, that's an incomplete sentence. There has to be a meaning there. What does it mean? It says, in the name of Allah, I begin. In the name of Allah, I'm doing this action, right? That's what it actually means. And why do I do it? For two things. Seeking Allah's protection and seeking His blessing. Allahu a'lam, sallallahu ala khayri khalqi nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.
Allah